Holding space is basically allowing our energy to be a container for the needs and growth and loving up of others. So it doesn't mean that we're fixing people or that we think they need to be fixed. In fact, it means the opposite. It means the recognition that other people are exactly where they need to be, and all they really require from us is the energetic space to be all of themselves. So when they're showing up in ways that might not be their ideal version of themselves, or when they're moving through something very challenging for themselves, we can serve them better by just being the energy, the energetic space for them, than by trying to intervene and fix. And I wanted to tell you a story about a fairly recent, very many month long stint of doing this for a partner. So my twin flame, my last very serious partner, ended up about 3 months into the 5 months that we lived together, somewhere around there, 3 months into the 5 months that we lived together, we ended up seeing some things unfold within him. We went home to visit his family, and some childhood trauma was catalyzed by his being home. And I had previously catalyzed him really stepping into a more spirit-filled, self-sourced, fully aligned version of himself. And so those two things in unison created kind of a great opening for him to go through a lot of processing of previous traumas. So during that time, I held a lot of space for him. And instead of choosing to fix, and we often when we are confronted by the stuff of our partners, like this goes especially in partnerships or in family relationships where the person is an even bigger mirror for us than the rest of the world around us. So often in partnerships, when we see those mirrors, we unintentionally fall into spaces of feeling unloved, deeper fears of not being loved, standing up, thinking we're standing up for our desire to be loved, when a lot of the time it's like mirrors of what the other person needs to move through, triggering us to see where we aren't fully being loved or don't think we fully deserve love. So in partnership, when someone else is going through a trauma or a challenge or something deep and big has come up for them to move through, we so often, it's like when you see couples argue, it's often because one person can't hold space for the other. The other person sort of brings their shit into it instead of recognizing that what the other person is going through, all it really requires is that loving, energetic space for them to move through what they are. So with this partner, I luckily had already done a lot of work in my becoming process on really being able to hold space for others and really being able to see where my stuff was without it getting wrapped up into their experience when they were going through a challenge. So in holding space for him, what I found is that I've seen this with clients, but I saw it in a much larger way. Like when I work with clients, I found that when I hold space for them as the guide, as the facilitator, but it's like just as much to the facilitation and the guidance that I provide, or that source channels through me, or that I channel as source, depending on how you want to look at it. Even more than through that, I gain by just holding space for them. So when I'm working with a client, I often feel like I leave refreshed and rejuvenated as much as they do. And so I already knew that to be true, that when we hold space for another, we gain. And by doing this in a larger way with someone that I was living with, and someone that I was really, like, in a way, for a period of time, the only person that he felt he could trust, as he was opening up to these larger traumas that he had not been able to see in previous years in his life. And so what I found in this partnership through being the primary person to hold space for all of him as the challenges arose, and being the primary person to love him through the depths of the darkness. I found that by virtue of being the space for the darkness and being the light to transform the darkness into its own light, all darkness ever really is that which does not yet know itself to be light. So when we very consciously choose to hold space for another in their darkness, or in the darkness that is present for them, because it's really not ultimately them either, we create more room for more light to move through in general. And what that also means is sometimes when people think they're holding space for someone else's darkness, they can do it in a way that's fearful of the light. So like if they think that the other person's darkness, if they're fearful of that, or if they aren't yet fully accepting and loving and like able to just be present with darkness, knowing it's only light in the end, then they may counter the darkness with their own darkness, thinking it's light. Almost like the kind of forced, like when someone shows up as like thinking they're light, but it seems very false, or it seems very forced, or it seems very judgmental. Like that is really us perceiving that we're being light for someone else, but really it's like our darkness being darkness against theirs. And then what happens is just more crap coming through. And so when we really get that in the holding space for another, all we have to do is trust their process through the darkness and love them unconditionally in the space that they're in. We can actually find new levels within ourselves of ability to hold space for all of it, as well as new levels of power within ourselves. Because the depths of our power are us as creators. And us as creators are also kind of like shamans to convert darkness into light as well. Like when we create through ourselves for this planet, what we're also doing is we're contributing more light to this planet. And so by doing this for another, when we hold space, we are creators in that moment. And so we get to feel that deep sense of power moving through us, because our power is really the feeling of our creations coming to life. Like that's what power, one of the main things that power really, really is. And so all that is contributing more love to the planet. So when we get to practice this with someone who's very, very close to us and really unconditionally be there in their struggles, we get to find ourselves to be more powerful creators than we yet knew. Like we get to test those muscles. So with this partner, what I saw was versions of the sorceress that I didn't yet know. Things would happen where he would go into a huge pit of darkness, and then I would sort of drop into it like, okay, right now the best thing is just to be there for him, not to make him wrong, just to be there. So I would sort of root into that. And as I would feel my feet rooted into the earth, or my body my mind settling into my body, I would feel this version of the sorceress rise up that I would be like, who the fuck is that? But she was awesome, because the most powerful versions of us are just next level iterations of being love for this planet. And I would watch words come out of my mouth and watch actions come through, watch like an ushering for him come through, of bringing him all the way through the depths of the darkness, almost as if I were just lovingly holding his hand through the tunnel of darkness. And as I did so, I would feel my power growing. I would feel my capacity for love growing. So for me, aside from the many, many, many other things that partnership brought me, we have since chosen to complete. Maybe more stories on that coming soon, but we have since chosen to complete, but we did so from a very loving space of of being aware that, okay, we had this period of me holding space for him requiring me for that space holding, and now it's time for him to go it alone. And now it's time for me to release the space holding and not become codependent with it, and really like clear up that energetic space for my other creations in the world, while he is able to go it alone and really discover who he was inside of all of it and do those same things for himself that he watched me do for him. So, you know, that's what we do as guides. Like, everyone that I serve as a guide and facilitator for, it's not so that they can keep relying on me or this work and leaning on it. It's so that they can have someone to essentially hold their hand. You can have someone to hold your hand through it, so that upon completion of this work, you are more than able to do the same for yourself in your work in the world. If there's anything, like one of the most massive things that I learned from that experience is my ability to surrender into true space holding for another. And the absolute giving is receiving, giving and receiving are one and the same nature of when we truly hold space for another, how much more we get to step into our power as well. It's like we're holding space for them to step into their power, and we are simultaneously finding new levels of power within ourselves. And it's a big part of what I feel today has helped me to become the sorceress that I am. So it's like this becoming process can show up in all ways. It can show up in partnership as much as it can show up with our family, as much as it can show up in random moments. You know, you could be at the grocery store and have a really deep movement through you that is part of your process of becoming, as much as in your actual work in the world where you are truly becoming that vision. Because the thing is like when you are your vision, when you are becoming your vision, it starts to meld into your way of being an embodiment in all of the aspects of your being and all of the aspects of your life. So that's it for today. All my love.